Are you bound for Euphoria or a far stranger destination? Because Shackleton, like his namesake Ernest Shackleton, is an explorer, in this case of the furthest and weirdest hinterlands of electronic music, where drone, dub and psychedelia collide. Hello, this is George from George's Music Blog, and today I am talking about the new album by Shackleton, Euphoria Bound. Okay, so Shackleton, otherwise known as Sam Shackleton, is a British producer, often referred to as a pioneer in the dubstep genre, though his music is much more resistant to categorization than one genre label would suggest. Though to be fair, he ran the Skull Disco record label, which I believe was generally associated with the dubstep scene, along with Appleblim, another dubstep producer in the mid-2000s. And the label put out a run of 12 inches that took the genre in a much more pitched down and experimental direction. Over the course of more than a dozen albums, Shackleton has worked with a hugely varied selection of collaborators. Italian cabaret performer Ernesto Tomasini, spoken word performer Vengeance Tenfold, Polish jazz clarinetist Waclaw Zimpel, dub band Holy Tongue, Japanese breakcore producer Scotch Egg. All of these partnerships, as well as his solo releases, have taken his sound further and further into the realms of the transcendent, ritualistic and psychedelic. Although it's worth pointing out that Shackleton himself claims his music is fundamentally designed to make people dance. Now, before writing this review, I took stock of how well I know Shackleton's discography, and I was surprised at just how much of his music I've listened to. Yet, I still can't really say I've scratched the surface, and certainly don't count myself as an aficionado of his music. While I've always admired Shackleton for having a singular and instantly recognisable style, he's never been an artist that I've listened to that often, and it's rare a time when I'll have thought, I'm really in the mood for some Shackleton right now. That's no reflection on his music, and there is plenty of other dark and disorientating music I would listen to often. I guess I've just never been entirely sure which particular itch it's scratching. But that could be about to change with Euphoria Bound. By my count, his 16th album overall and 5th as Shackleton alone. This is the most immediate, urgent and enveloping I've ever found his music to be. Yes, it's instantly recognisable as Shackleton. The unusual time signatures, tonal percussion, tectonic bass, drones that shimmer in and out of focus like hazy after images. But it gets straight to the point with the opening track, Elemental Dream, throwing you straight into a bubbling soup of drum rolls, chopped vocal snippets, a ghostly choir, and Eastern instruments that, added to the general hubbub, make you feel like you've been dropped in the middle of a bustling souk. Now, even for someone as ignorant as I am about any music that isn't Western music, it's hard not to notice the Eastern influences here. Shackleton doesn't give too many interviews, and from those he has, it seems he's keen not to define his influences too rigidly, preferring to let his music speak for itself. But he does attribute some of this Eastern influence to a batch of cassettes of Moroccan Gnawa music he obtained after spending some time there, plus time spent living in Hungary and Turkey, which also no doubt had an effect. Fragments from these more far-flung locations swirl around constantly in a seething, roiling fashion, along with interplays of bass and percussion that pull you back to more nocturnal UK surrounds. And everything is buoyed along by restless and relentless rhythms. The result is a dense and intoxicating mixture, droning, trippy, pulsating, and massively psychedelic. So let's get into the details of some of these specific tracks. Philistine Wavelength is perhaps the most immediate. My lack of knowledge of musical instruments will let me down here, so I don't know whether it's a synth tone or a sample of some kind of stringed instrument, but whatever it is put through a delay, so the sound just reverberates through the mix, giving the track, again, very psychedelic dub sort of energy, as if a hallucinogenic sheen has been plastered over everything. Again, I can't tell you the name of the percussion, but there's this lovely bassy, wobbly sort of drum that gives the piece its throbbing pulse, and percolating through the whole mix is something like the sound of little water droplets trickling down, which just makes everything feel alive with this kind of wriggling organic energy. To be honest, while the album as a whole is incredibly detailed, honestly, you could lose yourself in any one of these 10 tracks, listening again and again and finding new details. So yeah, although it is detailed as a whole, I'm having a hard time distinguishing the separate tracks, as they do very much stick to a consistent sound palette and the energy and mood levels remain pretty steady throughout. As such, it's probably best to treat it as one continuous listening experience, which, to be fair, I try and do for all albums anyway. If pushed, I'd say the first half of the record is slightly more urgent, rhythmically speaking, with more cuts that could be used for raving too, rather than just purely tripping out. Track 3, Contagious Illusion, opens with whip-cracking percussion and a dank, bassy growl that harks back to the early days of dubstep. But like pretty much every track here, the time signature doesn't feel remotely like club music. Some sections here remind me of Nicholas Jar's take on minimal techno on his breakout album Space Is Only Noise. The tinkling piano refrain and the continuous cast of unusual percussion parading before your ears reminds me of Jar's kind of anything goes approach to rendering electronic forms in organic media. Crushing Realities works itself into a frenzy over its first 4 minutes, taking a vocal sample of what sounds like a female Asian singer, reversed and layered back on itself with dramatic flourishes of plucked strings, again, plucked on what? I don't know. And endless marches of drums, always drums. Some small, maybe marimbas, hand drums, some large. At one point they seem to beat the very air in the room until the track reaches a fearsome crescendo and almighty milieu where every instrument and voice is clamoring for attention at once. It's dazzlingly overwhelming and really does feel like reality is being crushed as the pitch slides and the voices begin to melt into soupy half-speed slurs. Did I mention this record was trippy? So, final reflections. Don't be misled by the title of Euphoria Bound. This is not music that's going to inspire heads rolling back, reach for the lasers kind of moments. It is murky, dank, intense, and demands your full attention. Having said that, if you're new or newish to Shackleton, then I'd say it's probably a good place to start. Caveat that with the fact that I have only heard around 50% of his recorded output, but from what I have heard, this is like the most concentrated, condensed version. And concise by Shackleton standards. Tracks here keep to the 6-minute mark rather than his usual 10-minute plus meanderings. And as I've said, while every track here is stuffed with detail, and again, if you're not in the right frame of mind, it can feel overwhelming, but there's also a focus, an urgency here that I've not sensed with many other Shackleton releases. Also, as I've hinted at, it is a deeply psychedelic record. What qualities exactly constitute something being a psychedelic is a conversation for another day, but there is no denying that Euphoria Bound exudes trippiness. I haven't touched any substances while playing this record, honest, but there is something in the constantly pulsating, crawling and seething mass that, having it on headphones, you could swear you're starting to see trails of following objects across your visual field. I dread to think what visions it might provoke if one was actually under the influence. So yeah, I don't do ratings, but consider this recommended if you want something trippy, doney, dubby and bassy. Some of the lesser known dwarfs there. Anyway, that is it from me. What did you think of this album? What other similar records would you recommend? I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.